Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll be starting in a moment. All the lines are muted for the recording and will be shared with attendees. Please submit your questions to the Q&A option at the bottom of the On24 platform. We will address these during the session, and any we don't get to, we will answer in the Splunk community or via email. There will be a video replay available in the Splunk Community Tech Talks, and thank you for attending. So with that, we'll jump in. So today's session is Unleash Unified Security and Observability with Splunk on Azure. I am your moderator, Beverly Smart. I'm a director in the Customer Lifecycle Marketing team, and our presenters today are Vinu Balusubramanian, who is a principal product manager for our global availability and platform services, and Wayne Brown, who's a global partner technical manager, both here at Splunk. So before we start, we want to take a quick poll and would like to see you answer one of these three questions. Do you use Splunk Cloud currently? Are you using it today? No, we still use Splunk Enterprise today on-prem or BYOL on public clouds, or yes, but we also use Splunk Enterprise and more of a hybrid. So if you wouldn't mind submitting your responses, and we'll see how people are, where people are, just to kick us off. Let's see. Okay. We'll give it just another second here. So it looks like a lot of folks are still using Splunk Enterprise today on-prem, which is definitely something that a lot of our customers are doing. So we're glad to know where you're at. And also you use Splunk Enterprise, so that's good. That's also a large part of our customers. So that's good, and it just gives our presenters a base of where you are and where your background and your knowledge is. So that's great. So let's go over the agenda, and then I'll hand it over to the presenters. So we're going to talk about the Splunk and Microsoft partnership, about the Microsoft Azure integration, and then how does Splunk work on Azure, next steps, resources, and then we'll have our Q&A session. So with that, I'm going to, sorry, I don't know why my screen's not letting me go forward, but I'm going to hand it over to Wayne to move forward and go into the Splunk Microsoft partnership. So Wayne, do you want to take over and move forward? Wayne? Vinu? Do we know what happened to Wayne?
Hey, Beverly, can everybody hear me? Okay, for some reason, I am not getting any sound at all, so. Okay, so my apologies on that. So what I want to do is I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the partnership between Microsoft and Splunk. And back in November of 2024, we made an announcement at Microsoft Ignite about our Splunk Cloud product being available on Microsoft Azure. This was something that was well over a year in the making, and the efforts were culminated in November of 2024 with the launch of Splunk Cloud on Azure, and this is something that we're extremely proud of. And just to go a little bit into how the partnership came about, as you're all very well aware, Splunk has best-in-class solutions not only for searching data and deriving insights from your data, but also building on that data platform and having solutions around security and observability. And then when we combine that with the power that Microsoft brings in the alliance, it really was quite the match that was made in heaven. So this is something that, again, we're extremely proud of. And right away, we have been fortunate to see success with a customer who is running their Splunk Cloud presence on Microsoft Azure. This is a very large, well-known private research and development university, thousands of staff members, very large student body. They had a signed an agreement with Microsoft to consume on the Azure platform. And between that and having initiatives to modernize their infrastructure and to move from an on-premise data center presence to a cloud environment, it was really a no-brainer to have them have their Splunk presence in Microsoft Azure. And even though the use cases, we're running in Microsoft Azure, the use cases are still the same. Whether you are starting from a foundational visibility aspect, just getting data in, being able to search, investigate, react to things in real time, all the way through the maturity cycle into being proactive, getting ahead of issues before they become major issues, and moving into that nirvana of unified workflows where everything is working well together. Whether that is within the security context or the observability context, the use cases are the same as they have always been with Splunk. We are just now taking advantage of the scalability that is available with Microsoft Azure. And so now what I want to do is, for the next few minutes, I want to turn it over to my co-presenter, Venu, and let him talk about, the thing that most everybody is interested in is, how does this work? Venu, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Wayne. Hi, folks. I'm Venu. I'm the lead PM who led the work on bringing Splunk to Azure. So first off, right, like, why care about this at all? That might be a question on some folks' minds. So the core of our reasoning to bring Splunk to Azure is that we want our customers, all of you, to have the complete choice of where you want your Splunk infrastructure to be hosted. You always have the choice to host it on-prem or on your own data centers, or you can host it publicly in the cloud. And if you choose to do so, you can have a managed Splunk cloud experience or not. So in the past, we had Splunk Cloud already available on AWS and GCP. But the reason we wanted to bring this to Azure is we know that we have a lot of customers who have a lot of their broader set of IT workloads already on Microsoft Azure. Maybe you're also running a number of Microsoft services in parallel with Splunk. So coming to Splunk Cloud and Azure, you're guaranteed that you have scalable and elastic infrastructure, which doesn't require you to manage any of the overhead of, think about version upgrades or scaling up the underlying hardware, etc. It's a fully managed service, completely reliable. So you don't have to worry about, hey, is there going to be outages that you have to worry about? We maintain our highly available architecture across all our cloud providers to ensure that we deliver on cloud reliability. And lastly, we really prioritize security. One of the things that you're assured of when you move to the cloud is that Splunk is doing the work on your behalf to make sure that we are monitoring security vulnerabilities, shipping patches, and making sure our entire cloud fleet is upgraded. I don't think this is a question that many of you might be new to, but for some folks here who might be new to Splunk, I thought it might be helpful to take 2 minutes and just take a step back and talk about what's Splunk, why Splunk, etc. But the way I think about it, right, is that fundamentally Splunk is a data platform that allows you to bring in data from any source You do not need to define a schema at the time of ingesting the data, which makes it much easier for any user who's suddenly got access to their um, team's Splunk instance to ask any question, right? And it's relatively easy to learn and come up the curve, made even more so by some of the latest features we've shipped, like AI Assistant, which we're going to talk about in a bit, and take action on it. Ultimately, it's about taking action, whether that's to mitigate a threat, to fix any kind of like uptime or latency issues, whatever the problem that you've identified. We want you to make it as easy as possible for you to take action and fix those issues. The way we do this is, first, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to bring data in, because we know that whether it's security or monitoring, these are all fundamentally data problems. And we know that the real insight and value is from being able to tie together data from different sources. And now that could be like network data, firewall data, application logs, or maybe something absolutely specific to your business, right? We have customers who bring in data from IoT devices, energy meters, whatever it is. You decide, and Splunk makes it easy for you to pull that data in. And this is absolutely true on Azure as well, by the way. Every service in Azure collects telemetry data. Most allow you to add in more events that you can capture. There might be data from other Microsoft applications you're running, like maybe it's O365, Windows logs, whatever it is. Bring all this data to Splunk frees you from having to capture it multiple times across multiple platforms. And you can do this in multiple ways, right? Whatever's easiest for you. Some of the things that our customers use most often include TAs, technical add-ons. We have Splunk supported TAs that are widely used for Microsoft cloud services. So think of a lot of Azure data sources. Office 365 is a really popular one, as is Windows and Microsoft Security. Another very popular way is to use our HTTP event collector, or what we call HEC, to route data from Azure to Splunk. And some customers also use forwarders. Whatever works for you, we make it easy for you to bring all the data you have from multiple applications and systems you're running on Azure into Splunk. And then once you're within the Splunk ecosystem, one of the things that makes it really powerful is that you can really tap into the wealth of publicly available apps, right? And Splunk Base is open, available to all Splunk customers, including on-prem as well as cloud. But there's a wealth of apps that have already been built on Splunk Base that can help you get insight and take action on your data. And that includes a number of apps that are built and supported by Splunk. Think of something like enterprise security or the Microsoft Cloud Service TA that we just talked about. Or it could be things that are built by the community. And we have, I think, several thousand apps the last time I checked. So that's a wealth of hard work that's already been put in by all the people who built these apps that you can leverage and helps you get up and running as soon as possible without losing time reinventing the wheel on some of the most common use cases that we have, whether it's bringing data in more easily, identifying insights, or taking action on that. Also, and I know this is a very important point for many of you, and I know many of you said that you're using Splunk Enterprise today. For each app that we have on Splunk Base, we have many more apps that are totally private, built by each customer for their own teams. And we know that very many cases, these are absolutely mission critical apps and core to your use cases. And like your users wouldn't know what to do on Splunk if those apps weren't there, right? And we absolutely get that. So being able to support private apps is a key part of the journey when we support customers who are currently on Splunk Enterprise to move to the cloud. And that's absolutely something that we'll work with you with as we help move you to the cloud if you're interested in that. And lastly, one of the things that is really awesome about Splunk is that it's so extensible. Splunk can ingest several kinds of data, but some of the power of Splunk is also in terms of how easy it is to build custom dashboards, visualizations, and make it easy for a wide variety of users in your company to be able to identify what's the insight of their data. There's many ways of going about this, right? There's dashboards that are easily customizable, which are becoming even more visually impactful with Dashboard Studio improvements. There is machine learning built in you can use our machine learning toolkit, MLTK, to build machine learning powered rules and flags to identify insights. And you can also build in apps and integrations to help translate these insights into actions. And lastly, a large part of what customers ask for when they are up, running, and using Splunk successfully is, hey, this is great, but can we do more? And I think that is one of the key promises of being on Splunk Cloud, that you can always scale up as you identify more use cases where leveraging Splunk is helpful. Whether it's a small instance with a single search head or you're running at petabyte scale, we are able to support you, able to scale your stack infrastructure to support those additional use cases in a highly available way so that you're both resilient and scalable to support your whatever use cases you want to extend to. Now let me just take a pause and move away from the general spiel of why Splunk Cloud, which I think a lot of you might have already heard many times in the past, and dig into exactly how and what this looks like on Azure in particular. So this is a high-level diagram outlining what Splunk's cloud architecture looks like on Azure. If you look at what's on the left side, the left half of that is whatever you have in your own IT environment, right? That might be in your own private data center. It might include workloads that you have on public clouds, and that might be a mix of Azure and other vendors as well. Whatever it is, ultimately you have data sources, and we use some common examples here like firewall, router, etc. as examples. But whatever those data sources, you then can set up a forwarding tier to collect data and forward it to Splunk, which sits within your own system boundary. And once the data is sent to Splunk, it comes over into the Splunk Cloud stack, which is built on Microsoft Azure. Within that, there's two sets of services that you should think about. One is all the services that are shown within the perimeter of that dotted line. Think of that as your own cloud stack, which has its own dedicated subscription. It sits within the Splunk account, but it's entirely dedicated to you. You also have on the right what the pink box shows as management services. Admin config services, one example. There are others as well. But those are shared services that are leveraged by multiple customers, but those do not handle your own data, but it's more for things like administration, stack orchestration type use cases. Within your stack, the way it's set up is there's the indexing and storage tier and the search and data collection tier. If you're from the question earlier, it sounded like all of you here are existing customers who are very familiar with Splunk. So I won't repeat things that you already know about how indexers and search heads work, but I will call your attention to some specific points that are really important and worth understanding on Azure. First, on the indexing and storage tier, you'll see a point that's called Dynamic Data Active Archive. That on Splunk Cloud, for all stacks, when you start, you're automatically given a certain amount of hot storage, which we call the actively searchable storage. You may see an acronym of DDAS in some places. But for customers that require data to be retained for longer periods of time, it's sometimes not economically feasible to maintain that in hot storage, and therefore we give multiple cold storage options. On Azure, we're going to launch DDAA, the Active Archive, as our first cold storage option. This is a Splunk managed archive index, which allows you to rehydrate a certain percentage of your data on demand, right? Imagine you archive some data that's held for compliance reasons, but realize that some incident investigation requires you to investigate that historical data that's not in your 90-day of hot data that you maintain in your actively searchable bucket. You can pull in some of the data from the active archive to support your investigation. And then that flexibility is what the active archive gives you. It's still on the roadmap. We're going to talk about timelines in just a little bit, but that's a specific cloud feature that I thought is worth calling out because a number of you mentioned that you're still on using Splunk Enterprise, but thinking about what Splunk Cloud is and how it differs from what you're already used to. The other point that I wanted to call out is that within the search tier, you'll see that both for ad hoc and for enterprise security, it says search heads/search head clusters. So one of the things that we're supporting out of the box on Azure is that depending on your scale, we are able to provision either search heads or search head clusters. The benefits being all around the resiliency and scale that we talked about, right? Whether that's for your core logging use cases, whether that's for your security monitoring use cases, we can support you with the right architecture for your data, for your workloads, so that you're achieving the resiliency and scale that you expect. One question might also be, hey, why doesn't ITSI support this? It's on the roadmap. It's something that we're working actively on. We're going to be rolling it out in coming quarters, first to customers on AWS and followed shortly after by customers on Azure. And the last point that I want to make on everything in the Splunk cloud stack here is that all customers on Microsoft Azure are given Victoria Experience by default. And for customers who are on Splunk Enterprise and who are like, hey, what is Victoria Experience and why does that matter to me? I think you should think about it in 3 ways. One is performance and scalability. Victoria Experience is our latest architecture. That means that all those stacks are more performant and resilient. The second piece that you should think about is from a app self-serviceability. It means that you don't need to rely on raising a ticket to perform any kind of app lifecycle activity, whether that's app installs, app upgrades, whatever it is. It gives you the power to self-service and manage your Splunk instance the way you want. And the last piece is feature availability, right? A lot of the latest features that we're building on Splunk has been built specifically for Victoria customers, because at this point, most stacks are on Victoria Experience. That is the way that our broader cloud fleet is headed. So increasingly, new features require that, and you get that by default for any stack that's built on Azure. Now, let's move forward and talk about specifically, hey, how does this fit in with other things you have on Microsoft? So when you're opting to have Splunk on Azure, I expect a lot of you are already using several other Microsoft systems, whether that's Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Office 365, whatever it is. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for you to both get data in and get value out. And to help you bring data in, we have integrations built in, like we discussed earlier with our Microsoft Cloud Service TA to bring data in easily. You can use the HEC integration with Azure Event Hubs. And in terms of getting data out, there's a ton of constantly updated content that is built in to Splunk products, whether that's enterprise security, IT service intelligence, that helps you get insight immediately from the most common Microsoft data sources that you bring in, right? So it allows you to identify threats, notable events in things like Entra ID logs or Defender logs. It helps you identify application performance issues in things like Windows or Microsoft 365 logs, etc. And lastly, we are also supporting customers who are trying to write their own SPL for the first time with SPL AI Assistant. This can do one of two things. For customers who want to write a query and aren't sure how, it lets you just describe what you want to do and gives you a recommended SPL search. For that one odd user on Teams, and I've been that person sometimes, who knows SPL that everyone else on the team sees an SPL search and goes, hey, what is this doing? How does this work? It also allows you to copy that, put that into the AI assistant and explains, hey, this is how the search functions. And then that really makes it easier for members on the team who are maybe less familiar with SPL to come up the curve and make the most of what Splunk has built into its products. Now, before we go on to talking about like what's our roadmap, etc., I want to just take a pause and just understand where folks are. So I'd love to know what percentage of your cloud workloads are running on Azure right now, just to get a sense of like, hey, are people thinking about moving to Azure, or are you already there? So the options that we have here, just to explain, is out of your overall IT footprint, what percentage is currently on Microsoft Azure, and that could be less than 25%, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, or maybe even you have most of your IT footprint on Azure already. I see responses ticking up, so I'll give folks a few more seconds to think about, hey, where is all my workloads being hosted right now? And then we'll move on. Looks like we hit a little bit of a plateau. So then last 2 seconds, and then we'll keep going. Okay, that's really helpful to know. Looks like it's a 0 to 25. So maybe teams are evaluating it / have some workloads there, but they also have a lot of workloads elsewhere. And that's, by the way, one of the big advantages of bringing data into Splunk, right? For teams that have data sitting in multiple clouds, plus data sources that are on-prem, being able to bring it all into one place, stitch it together, and get insight across all of them is key to being able to have end-to-end visibility over your systems and infrastructure. One more question before we move on. What is the primary use case you have for Splunk? And this is going to be a little tricky because I know that some teams have multiple use cases there. So feel free to pick whichever one you think is the big one. They could be security, IT operations, application development, and just log monitoring for as part of that, or anything else. And I know we have a number of customers who have a ton of other use cases that they leverage Splunk for. Oh, wow. Answers are really taking up much faster for this one. But we'll still give folks a couple of seconds to throw their answers in. And this is just for me to have a sense of the audience here. This isn't being used for any other reason. All right. Let's keep moving. Oh, looks like most of the team here is very security focused. All right, awesome. That's really helpful for me to prioritize security related things when we talk about the roadmap. So there's 3 buckets here. The first bucket that we'll talk about is things that are available now. And I'd like to spend a lot of time there because it's really helpful for all of you who might be evaluating that, hey, is this something that fits what you need today? Or do you need additional features that are on the roadmap before you can think of moving to cloud on Azure? So the first bucket are things that are available now. Doesn't need any kind of timeline explanation. The next bucket, which is called Next, are a mix of things that are likely to be available in 0 to 6 or at most about 12 months out. Things that are called Future are longer term items. Most of these are year plus further out. So significantly further down the roadmap. but many of them are in design discussions right now. There may be opportunity for you to participate in early design discussions of like, hey, what are the key use cases that you'd be excited to see supported? What are the key requirements that you might have if that's a feature you're interested in? So if you're interested, please do reach out, and we'd love to connect you with the teams that are building these features and maybe have you participate in a preview once it's available. But starting at the top, right? What's available now? We are very excited to say that we have our most popular products, which is Splunk's cloud platform, what's sometimes called Splunk Core, and as well as our security monitoring solution, which is enterprise security, our IT service intelligence, ITSI for short, as well as our SOC automation product, SOAR, that's all available on Splunk, on Azure as of today. And some of our latest product releases, think of like the latest version, ES 8.0 that shipped earlier this year, makes it really easy for customers to be able to make the most out of having multiple products and tying it in a more integrated way. So that now, particularly for all the security teams that answered the previous question by saying that, hey, the security monitoring is your top use case, you're now able to do things like use ES 8.0 as a single pane of glass, where you identify notable events and threats that you need to investigate, launch an investigation, and but now also link it to SOAR so that you can click through and trigger automated playbooks to take action on the issues and risks that you've identified. So that's part of the real benefit of all of these being available at the same time right now. The other things that we continue to offer, I really think of this as things that are bread and butter for any customer on the cloud, is app management. Like I said, Victoria Experience guarantees that you're able to manage your apps yourself, whether that's app upgrades, new app install, whatever it is. We are able to migrate customers. I know the majority of the audience mentioned that you're currently on Splunk Enterprise, or maybe you have some workloads on Enterprise. You're able to migrate those to Splunk Cloud. And you have the same set of cloud administration tools. Think of that, whether that's the monitoring console, RBAC, etc., as any other Splunk Cloud customers. We want to make sure that customers have as similar an experience as possible, irrespective of where you want your Splunk Cloud stack hosted. Things that are coming up include some key asks from some of our larger customers, and as well as customers in more regulated industries. This include private connectivity, so that your data, while being ingested, or maybe when you're doing a federated search, isn't going over the public internet. Customer managed encryption keys. We also are working on launching our Splunk AI assistant, as well as an integration with Microsoft Copilot. Out of this, private connectivity and AI assistant are expected to launch pretty shortly in the next 3 to 6 months, with others being a little further out. And the other last point is on cheaper archival storage, which is the active archive DDAA storage that we discussed earlier. That's also coming later this year. Things that are going to be further out that we are working on but aren't yet close to being launched include features like federated search. We've launched federated search for S3 as well as Amazon Security Lake on AWS. We want to offer a similar offering to customers on Azure, where imagine if you have data stored in Azure Blob or Azure Data Lake, you should be able to search that from within Splunk so that you can correlate and get insight irrespective of whether the data is sitting within Splunk or outside Splunk, because we understand that customers can't bring all their data into Splunk in all situations. We also want to offer improved routing and filtering capabilities at the edge. Some capabilities are built in already with the existing ingest actions feature, but once we launch Edge Processor on Azure, it'll offer support for much more complex use cases. In addition to that, we're also bringing our wider observability suite, including infrastructure monitoring, application metrics monitoring, etc., to Azure, but that's a little further out, as well as our plans for offering high compliance environments targeting the public sector. I'm not sure how many I see a few customers from federal agencies, etc. So that is on our roadmap. We have heard you loud and clear, but given the criticality of getting the controls right and going through audit, those are expected to take a little longer. And in any case, if you have any questions, we can take it at the end of the session. But for now, before I hand it back, I did want to make a reminder, given that we are in US hours, I expect a lot of customers here are based in the Americas. We have 2 regions in the Americas, US East and West, but we also have a growing footprint globally. At launch, we have Japan and UK as our first regions in APAC and EMEA. We are launching in Germany to unblock any EU-based customers who want a region within the EU very soon. And we'll be following that with other regions globally. So if you feel like you need a region and that's not there, please do feel free to reach out to your Splunk team and discuss this. This is something where we are aimed to be where our customers want us. So our footprint is going to continue to grow and will continue to mirror demand that we hear from all of you. Now I'll pass it back to Wayne to talk a little bit more about Cisco's wider offering, because as the part of Cisco, Splunk is now only a part of what we offer on Microsoft. Over to you, Wayne.
Thanks, Vinu. Every time I do one of these sessions with you, I always learn something new. So thank you for diving deeper into the technical side of Splunk Cloud on Azure. And so the next steps and resources, as Vinu mentioned, we are part of Cisco. And as such, Splunk Cloud on Azure is available for purchase via the Azure Marketplace. So if your organization has signed an agreement with Microsoft to basically agreeing to consume a certain amount of Azure usage, you can actually purchase Splunk Cloud on Azure through Azure Marketplace and be able to burn down some of that commitment on that. In addition, because we are part of Cisco, we also have other offerings that are available on Azure Marketplace. And those range across collaboration and networking, security, observability. Again, just want to make you aware that all of these options are available. And to start to wrap things up, the main message that we wanted to drive home today was being in Azure now, we now are able to achieve more and unlock more and continue to be more resilient so that we can deliver that digital resilience to your trusted cloud, no matter where you reside. Be able to get access to your data across your IT environments, your security environments, and be able to innovate with agility driven by artificial intelligence. And finally, before I turn it over to Beverly for Q&A, we want to keep talking about this. We want to keep talking to you about Splunk on Azure. So we have some resources here. We have an ebook that's focused on Splunk on Azure. We also have a previous webinar that was recorded around this. We also have information around if you want to move from an on-premise installation to Splunk Cloud on Azure. We have an entire hub that's available for that. And then finally, if you're just interested in anything that's related to Splunk and Microsoft in general, you can always come check out splunk.com/Microsoft. And with that, Beverly, I'm going to turn it over to you for Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Wayne and Vinu. Those were great presentations. I hope everyone got a lot out of those. It was very knowledgeable. We have a few questions in the chat in this Q&A. So I'll start with these, but please feel free to add more. We'd love to hear from you. First question I see is, we're starting to look at a migration to the Splunk Cloud. How would we get started with this? So Wayne or Vinu, one of you take this?
Yeah, I'll take this. So the best way to start kicking off that conversation is to talk to your account team, talk to your customer success contact. Work with them, let them know that you are interested in migrating and moving over to Splunk Cloud on Azure, and we will be more than happy to go through that process with you.
Okay. I also see a question. If we already have a Microsoft Mac agreement, how does Splunk spend get counted against that?
I can also take that one as well. It's a 1-to-1. So, every dollar that you spend on an investment for Splunk Cloud on Azure is it's matched 1-to-1 against your Mac agreement.
Okay. We have another question here. Is it easier to ingest data from our Microsoft ecosystem if we host Splunk Cloud on Azure as well?
Vinu, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, happy to. I think there's two things to answer here. I think one is the ease of setting it up, and the second is the cost of ingesting that data. If Splunk and your workloads are both on Microsoft Azure, I think the real benefit you have is that you don't pay for egress charges. And we know that, especially for larger customers, it can really add up. The process of setting it up is actually quite similar. And we make it simple for customers, irrespective of where your cloud stack is hosted, to be easily able to ingest data from all your cloud data sources.
Okay. We have another question here. How is feature parity expected to evolve on Azure in the future?
Thank you. I'll take this. This is maybe my favorite question. So a big thank you to whoever asked this. It's one of those tough questions that is on everyone's mind. So thank you for reminding me to answer this. This is a great question because this is something that we know we absolutely owe to all our customers. So the way we have architected our Splunk Cloud platform on Azure at launch is we have brought all our fundamental building blocks, whether that's the Victoria experience, whether that's our underlying cloud service platform, to make it really easy for all our feature teams to build on Azure. Having said that, simply given the number of customers across different CSPs, what we expect to see in the future is that new features, when they first launch on AWS, because we have a large set of customers, we get feedback, we iterate, we iron out the kinks. Once it's mature, we then do a fast follow to Azure and Google. So expect features to roll out to Azure a couple of quarters maybe after they become available on AWS. It's going to vary from feature to feature, depending on their release rollout plans, as well as issues identified from early customers. But largely think of it as a fast follow model, right? That we launch first on Amazon and then fast follow to Azure.
Okay. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I will... I think, Wayne, did you see a couple other questions that you wanted to share?
Yeah, Beverly, I did see a couple. There were also a couple that I answered previously, and I'll answer those as well on air as well. One of the questions asked was around private connectivity. Is it unique to Azure and not for AWS? So right now we do have private connectivity offerings that are available for our Splunk Cloud offerings that are running on AWS, and the private connectivity on Azure is something that we are working on right now. The other question on this is around there's one around presence on Azure Government, and there's another one around federated search. So Vinu, why don't I turn this over to you and let you?
Absolutely. Thank you. So to Sean, who asked the question, hey, is Splunk available on Azure Government Secret? We know this is a big ask from many of our customers that have highly confidential and sensitive workloads. It is something that we are evaluating. However, given the controls that are important to have in place for something that's handling secret and top secret data, it's going to be a longer term effort. We'll definitely keep you posted as this continues to evolve, but definitely something that we think will become available in the next 12 months. It is part of our medium term, like 3-year roadmap, and we're evaluating what's required. The second question that we got, again on future roadmap, was when will you have federated search in Azure Data Lake ready? And how about the cost for data leaving Azure? Thank you to whoever asked the question. So when, a little hard to say. This is something that we are designing and developing right now. If you're open to being pulled into discussions, I'd love to. So what I'm going to do is pull your contact details from the system and reach out to you after this to see if you're open to have discussions with our product team that's developing this. But we expect this to be available maybe toward the end of the year or early next year. In terms of what's the cost for data leaving Azure, I'm not sure I quite understood the question, but let me kind of try and explain this. This feature will be available both to customers who have their stacks on Azure, as well as to customers who have their stacks outside Azure. For both, there will be a Splunk pricing plan, which is built around how much data you scan outside of Splunk, right? And that's going to be regardless of where your data is and regardless of where your Splunk cloud stack is hosted. The cost for data leaving Azure really comes into play again for stacks that are not on Azure. If your stack is on AWS, for instance, and you're querying data in Azure, there will certainly be an egress fee. And those tend to be things that are best discussed on a case-by-case basis, depending on exactly how where your data is, where your stack is, etc. Details matter. So we can get into that closer to launch, but that's the general principle.
All right. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. So let's just jump before you all leave. I hope many of you have attended .conf in the past, and we're excited for .conf 25 with a new location in Boston on September 8th to 11th this year. So we'd love to see you there. It's a great opportunity to connect with thousands of Splunk customers and users like yourself, deep dive into technical content, and impress your boss with your new Splunk skills, and see real-life examples of how others are using Splunk to avoid disruptions and downtime. So just want to make a little shout out about that. And then you can always continue the conversation on the Splunk community. Sign up or sign into our community. It's a great opportunity to connect with other like-minded Splunk users and help to search for answers for our Splunk Enterprise, to share, to view and share best practices, get into discussions on the Splunk Tech Talk section for platform, and look for ideas to be able to search, vote, and request enhancements to solutions for the future. These are all really great opportunities for you as customers to make an impact on the future of our products as we grow and change different things, and making sure that we're addressing your needs as we continue on. And with that, there's also a scan here. You can scan this QR code. We do some Splunk community office hours where we get into deep dive discussions with Splunk technical experts that can answer your questions and provide live how-to guidance on various topics. So check there's also security office hour sessions. You can scan the QR code, or we'll put in the link in the Q&A. Let's make sure we do that. So it's available for the office hours, or you can always join on Slack on the hashtag office_hours. It's a great opportunity to get into a one-to-one deep dive conversation with a technical expert to help you. And with that, I think that's it. And we thank you for your time. And we hope this session was valuable. And we look forward to seeing you at a future session. Have a great day.